What a great topic.
I know. There's not enough time.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
I'll tell you right away. I know.
Okay, we are on camera, people. We're a little bit late, but we're here. And for those of you who are watching us out there, this is 360 Performance on a Friday. Not quite 11 o'clock, but close. We've got another show that comes in now every other week at 10 o'clock, bumping right up against us. But, you know, part of performance is adjusting and adapting, and that's what we do. So we've done that. And Amy Morin's here with me today. I'll be more formal in my introduction to her in just a second, but I want to make sure we give the proper due to the introduction, because it's really it's literally a global topic, people. There is no question about the fact that masks or no masks is a global topic. People are concerned about that. And then when you add the vaccine and that you've actually been vaccinated, how do you play that? Do we still have to wear a mask? Well, there are bodies out there that make those decisions and give us guidance. So we're going to talk about the CDC, but I want to talk about it from that professional's point of view and the mom's point of view. And what better place to go than with Amy Morin, a family nurse practitioner, who is definitely in the family mode these days, taking care of kids, making sure that that's her first priority. But my experience with her has been as a professional medical and healthcare professional. And she's always there for me to bring us the perspective from literally boots on the ground, or I guess it's sandals and tennis shoes on the ground. I'm not sure what they're wearing at your house, but they're smaller than boots.
Bare feet.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, bare feet. That's in vogue right now with the weather changes. So we're going to talk about summer scientist. Are we? Should we? Moms, we need to give you some information about that. So we're going to talk about those things. But as we start every week and then lead it up to the show, we have our mindset moment. And I felt that it was appropriate to quote Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was, he since passed away years ago, but he was a survivor of concentration camps during World War II and a healthcare professional, a mental healthcare professional. So he had this quote: "At any moment, man must decide, for better or for worse, what will be the monument of his," or he didn't say this, "or her existence." And we're faced with decisions that test that monumental moment for us about what are we, who are we, how will we exist and be present in those moments. And with today's topic about masks, no masks, vaccines, get the second vaccine, that just boggles my mind. Why would you not get the second vaccine? That just is a conundrum for me. So that was our mindset moment for this week from Viktor Frankl. At any moment, man must decide, for better or for worse, what will be the monument of his or her existence. Now, moving on from there, we have our theme for today: mask or no mask. Come on, people, don't panic. Just chill, take it easy, we'll be fine. The questions are, when is the mask? Where should we wear the mask? And then ultimately, why am I wearing the mask? Have you ever seen that person that's not quite sure? It's like underneath their nose. Should I wear or shouldn't I wear? I'm not exactly sure. And then they get accosted by the flight attendant and say, put that mask up over your nose. I always giggle when they have the announcements on the flights that I'm taking now about warning people on the PA, and then they walk up and down the aisle catching those that are not wearing it properly. But it's all evidence-based, the decisions, the requests, the things you're asked to comply with. Now, the thing that's in the mix now is vaccination. I'm a card carrier. Got it. Prove it. I carried it in my phone. I copied it in my phone, so I have it with me. But that doesn't mean you should stop washing your hands. So wash your hands. And like my grandmother and my mother would tell me, cover your mouth when you cough. If you've got a sneeze coming, cover that thing up. Because it's not just about pandemic and COVID. How about influenza? How about just your basic common cold? How about just being courteous and don't let stuff fly out of your mouth uncontrolled? That just seems reasonable, doesn't it? All right, we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So let's make sure that we are staying in the mode that we believe and understand that masks can actually save lives, in that we create a vision for ourselves about the healing process, about how we can participate in that process. And you will provide an example through your actions to others that validates that statement. Masks do in fact save lives. Perform to the level that you need to perform to make that a true statement. All right, shifting gears out of that. Oh, that's just negative sounding stuff. Disease and sputum and ugh. All right, let's talk about something more fun, the draft. There's a performance issue for you. The 2021 draft, a virtual occurrence. It's so interesting to talk to coaches and administrators at the NFL level about what they're doing. Well, as I say every week, the force is with them. Let the force be with them. And here's what's resulting with the force being with them. No matter what they say to us about what their picks are going to be, they have been offensive oriented in the first round. There have been over more than 5 picks were quarterbacks, and the first 3 were quarterbacks. So it's a QB thing again. Number 1 was a QB. That number 1 in round 1 was a QB. Round 1, the Broncos took a quarterback. After all the stuff they talked about the quarterback they wanted, they pick a quarterback from Alabama. Now, he's a good kid, by the way. I know how good this kid is. He did some things to win some games for Alabama with his efforts as a defensive player. But regardless of that, he was one of very few choices in the first round that were defensive oriented. Most of it was offense. And most of it was skill position offense. So it was wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, and an occasional offensive lineman. So that was the state of the draft. So as we end with our announcements for today, I want you to know about one of the things I talk about every week is thinking forward, thinking with the end in mind. I think if we do that with a sense of gratitude, we will be better with our interactions with others, and we'll have better luck in our approach to mask or no mask. So here's what I'm grateful for. And this is where I'll bring Amy in formally, introduce her and ask her to share with us what she's grateful for. Well, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for my health. As many of you might know, I tore my rotator cuff. Well, I don't have the sling on today because I don't have to wear it when I'm not around crowds. So they don't bump into me. It's like an emblem. See this big thing on my arm? Don't run into me. Stay away. Well, I don't have to wear it in the studio. So I'm grateful for my health. I'm also grateful for being a better communicator. I'm working really, really hard at being more specific about the words I choose so I can be clear and concise in what I share with others. So I'm grateful for that. So Amy Warren, family nurse practitioner, welcome again. What are you grateful for?
Thank you. Wow. I think there's a lot to be grateful for in this day and age. And I too am, actively, setting intentions about noticing what I can be grateful for and where the opportunity is in every situation. We've all experienced a lot of shifting and changing, and with that has come quite a few challenges. And, there's been a lot of fear in the air as well. And so I do also feel very thankful for my health and my family's health. And, I'm also grateful for the science and the technology that we do have in our country right now. You look at what's happening in India, it's such a good reminder of, and also brings some perspective, I think, on what we do have going for us. And speaking, directly, related to that is the vaccinations that we have, and where our technology is going in terms of, the science world. So I feel grateful for that as well.
Thank you for that, Amy. You have a great reminder about India. For me, gratitude with that example. Gratitude for that example is really interesting for me. Oh my gosh, I did this again this week. Gosh sakes. When you think about bonfires on the street, they're crematoriums for the citizens of India. That's what the picture. When you see on the news these little fires along the street, I mean, that's just sad. And we're fortunate with the science we have. We are extremely, extremely fortunate with the science that we have. I'm so absolutely agree with you. So, reminder to everybody. With that being said, once this broadcast is finished, we take this live broadcast, we put it up into the digital airways, and we put it on our podcast site. You can go to Spotify, type in 360 Performance in the podcast site, and bada bing, bada boom, you can hear us again if you'd like, or share it with a friend. It's also on Apple, Google, and well, iTunes is obviously Apple, but many other sites. When you plug into Anchor.fm, go to Anchor.fm and look for 360 Performance. You'll find all the sites that we post our podcast on. So I want you to get involved with that, share it with friends, enjoy it, make plans to take action every Friday at 11 o'clock, and listen to what we have to share about the plans that we make here at KUHS, streaming to you from here in wonderful Denver, Colorado, all over the world. And today we've got a great show with Amy Morin, and we're going to talk about just all the things that are changing. And the CDC is a good guidance for us. And come on, give them a break too, people. The CDC is a good place to get insights, but they are also faced with the sudden changes that we are. I mean, for example, India is an indication there are different versions of this virus that may already, well, they are already here, but we need to have good, solid, science-based plans to look at that and adjust and adapt to that. So when we look at our mindset, Amy, what are your thoughts about wearing the mask, not wearing the mask? As of Monday in Colorado, we've gotten, the governor has said, okay, if you're outdoors and you've been vaccinated, take the mask off. But there's a but in there for us. What is that but?
Yeah. Well, there is a but. I think the caveat that we're all faced with is everybody, whether they have somebody in their own family or is closely connected with children and anyone under, now it's going to be under the age of 16, but under the age of 18 is not currently vaccinated. And so it presents a really, it presents a little bit of confusion, I think, about how to navigate when you aren't with children, and then the importance of modeling behavior. So when I think about it from when I have my mom hat on, I'm thinking, well, I may feel comfortable because I know I'm vaccinated and the people I'm spending time with are also vaccinated, but what about our children who are not vaccinated? So, and then if I'm not wearing my mask, what message am I sending? And depending on the age of the child, they may or may not really be able to digest that and understand it. It may be very confusing for them. So, that's just kind of one of the things that comes up that's a reality that we're sort of all facing. It's like, oh, great, we can feel safe if we're vaccinated not wearing our mask. And doesn't that feel nice? And then, it's also a good reminder that while it is very safe, and if two individuals are vaccinated, based on the studies that are being done, the chances of COVID being passed or transmitted is extremely, extremely low. It isn't 100% vaccination, and there are variants that are floating around that are continuing to spread, and so it's unfortunately not a done deal, and we have to continue to be vigilant. And we as a society, and do our best to make good choices, and also, I think, be informed. Being informed, I think there's a lot of question about what that really means right now, because as you mentioned, as the pandemic has unfolded, it's been very clear from the start that while we're catching up a little bit with being able to provide, we meaning, the medical community and the scientific community, to provide better, data based on some research, it's all happening, in real time.
Yeah.
So it's a continual challenge, and there's a reason why the messages are mixed and confusing and changing all the time. And it's absolutely reasonable to allow oneself to feel frustrated with that, because it's frustrating and confusing. And that doesn't mean you have to point the finger at anybody, but it's okay to like honor your feelings. And then try to move into like, well, what can I do about it? How am I showing up? And what, you know, what are my actionable items?
Amy, can I point a finger at somebody who really is just being an idiot about what they say? Like the message that if you see someone on the street with a child who has a mask on, call the police because it's child abuse. To ask the kid to wear a mask. I mean, that's national broadcast. That's where we've gotten with the messages being twisted and manipulated for whatever the reason was. I don't even want to understand the rationale for why you would say something like that. Because I'm a scientist, you're a scientist, we talk to people that want to find out about the science because they don't know. Those are reasonable beings. So when we set examples for the kids and wearing our masks, what example do we send to the kids for handling those skewed versions of the message? Because that intrigues me as well. When I talked about the no mask thing, that was why I was mindful of that. Is because there are bad messages out there that because of the source they think it's credible.
Yeah,
and it just bothers me.
Yeah, it presents a real challenge, and we're not doing a show on, you know, the ins and outs of media coverage in this day and age, but it's a challenge for parents. I mean, that's one example of you know, as a mom, I have my own feelings about how I'm going to protect my family, how I want them to behave and show up in the world, and then they also still go and make their own choices. I don't, knowing where my control stops is part of the reminder for me every day, and that, you know, it's really equipping your children. I mean, I try to just equip my children with an understanding of, you know, that they are going to hear things, and people, you know, they come home with messages they've heard about or been passed around in school, and, you know, I just reminding ourselves that what we do in our family, and here are our reasons, and we don't, you know, what other people are doing and saying, that's for them to decide and do, and all we can do is show up the way we feel, you know, we feel right about, that we feel like we're in line with our beliefs and our values and what's important to us and our family. So
let's take that and look at a more scientific slice of messaging, which is, okay, I got my first vaccine, and now there's reports that people are actually saying, I'm not going to take my second one. I'm good. I'm comfortable. Like they have some kind of magical insight to science that nobody else does that gives them justification not to go get the second vaccine. What do you say to them scientifically about that?
I remind, and I talk about it in my outside of the medical setting with those I know, that that where the science is and where our studies are and what everything's being based off of is two shots right now, and that's what we know. 2 shots for the vaccines that are currently still being administered. So I think that it's easy to look at, especially for those who are not really fully, maybe have a minimal understanding of the scientific process, that, you know, we'll just take the data. If you take it out of context, it doesn't apply the same way. So if you say, well, I know if I'm like 80 or 85% with one vaccine, then I'm good with that. That's good enough for me. You know, but there's some really important things being missed in that, you know, the things being the fact that that's not how the vaccines are really studied. And it's hard and it's frustrating because in the end, if in the future there are changes made based on additional data and research, you know, it's part of being able to, adjust to and trust that, you know, you're doing the best you can in any given moment.
All right, help me out with this example then, to what you just said. I translate it to very grounded examples and metaphors. So I'm going to refer to as painting. I'm painting a wall. Got my favorite color, going to change the paint on the wall. And I'm painting with the roller, and you've painted with the roller. You know what it looks like when it gets out of paint, right? It starts to fade a little bit. But up above, I got plenty of coverage. That's my first vaccine. I haven't finished the coverage. I need more paint to finish the coverage so it's really good and the color is brilliant and I love it, and if I feel good because of it. That's the second vaccine, to finish the coverage.
Yeah, and you don't know if you leave that lighter coat, if it might fleck off more easily, to kind of go along with your analogy. So there are a lot of things that aren't necessarily obvious up front if you just tack on to a number of, say, 85%. Oh, I'm 85%, I'm good. Well, there's so much more to it. And that's true with anything. So I think, yeah, whether you're painting or you're getting your vaccine, you know, there's a way to do it. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, you know, completely or thoroughly. As thoroughly as you can. And
don't people metabolize?
It's not perfect. It's not a perfect system. I don't think anybody's out there saying it's perfect.
Don't people metabolize it differently, Amy? Like first, don't people metabolize the vaccines at different rates? So you can't just take one brush at understanding the first vaccine at 85% coverage and presume that that's what you get.
Right. Well, remember, that's a collection of data.
Yeah.
So, which is across, you know, thousands and thousands of individuals, now millions. But so as they're continuing to collect data and they're seeing sort of the range of what the response rates are, what the antibody levels are, which really tells us how the immune system's responded. So you talked about metabolism, and it's sort of like if you think about your immune system, your body needs to recognize that the virus is foreign, it's not supposed to be in the body, and then it needs to respond to it.
Yeah.
And just like we know, you could take that analogy lots of places, we don't all respond the same way. So I think that's, you know, that's where the recommendations are coming from, is to give the best opportunity for the body to respond as fully as possible, to be able to then keep a person in good health and also keep a person from passing the virus to someone who is not in as good of health, who's more vulnerable.
So with that uptake that people have that varies, environmental factors can influence the pros and cons of how well you take up that vaccine, how the conditions you have, whether it's temperature or it's nutrition or a combination of the both. One of the things I want to ask you about is in one's home, have we been behind in making sure our HVAC systems are optimized to protect us against the varying pathogens that we now find in our environment, the air, you know, should we be doing better?
Right, it's a really good question, and I am not an HVAC expert, but I do know that most homes don't have the filtration systems that filter out viruses. Viruses are really tiny particles. They're smaller than bacteria usually. Like it's a tiny particle, and that's why you hear a lot of the discussion about HEPA filters, because HEPA filters, and I don't quote me because I don't know if every HEPA filter by nature of how it's built and the size of what it allows through will automatically, or if it's only some HEPA filters, but will automatically filter out viruses. What the airline industry has done is, you know, instilled those in all of their aircraft so that filtration, I mean, people joke that like being on an airplane is like the safest indoor place to be. I wouldn't go that far, but I would definitely say that it appears that, you know, if you have appropriate filtration, when you can't ventilate, which we should get to, I think it's a good segue to talk a little bit about what's the reality of living right now, indoor, outdoor gatherings and things like that. But yeah, so looking at what our filtration systems are and how to upgrade those, I'm actually curious if you've heard of anything, because I sort of wonder what might already be out there for and available for residential purchase. I mean, I know there's commercial.
Yeah, I've done some research in preparation for this question, assuming that neither one of us are HVAC experts, but there is Google.
Yeah.
So I on my system at home, I have an April Air system. That's a brand name, but it's one of many installed systems to refilter the intake of air that comes into your home. It has a HEPA filter on it. I had to choose to put that on there. It wasn't an automatic. There are varying levels of filtration. Most HEPA filters, based on the research I did, do not get to the particle size that would take out viral pathogens. Certain types of bacteria, but then there's also other bacteria that's even smaller, so there's not all bacteria is taken out. Now, what it was initially designed for was for allergens. So, you know, your hay fever people, the pollens, the ragweed, the seeds, whatever might be there. Now, some dust and molds are also taken out of there, like the dander from a dog or a cat can be pulled through there and captured. And from what I discovered was, ask the professionals for that filtration system about HEPA filters that will take out, and they have them, they're expensive, to take out virus and bacteria. And they've actually got charts. You can make your choices as to which ones you want to protect against and which ones you don't. Ultimately, I think there's going to be, based on some of the research, there's going to be changes in the construction industry to have available better systems, redundancies, so there's a staging of things as the air flows through, and also adding forced air systems to push the wind through these filters so it gets caught and captured.
Yeah, I mean, it brings up a lot of really important points. There's what one can do now, the average person in the United States of America can do to improve ventilation in their home. And then that really is dependent on climate. I mean, we're fortunate here in Colorado, we have a really dry climate. When it gets hot, most of the time you can open the windows and really ventilate if you don't have good AC. AC is a form of forcing air, so that can actually help to move the air to circulate. So circulating AC is better than not, or still, or running a fan. There are also room filtration devices that you can buy, so like air filtration system that is a standalone that you could put in a room that's maybe where there's a gathering space, for instance, and to then run it through the HEPA filter through that, as a way of improving the air quality. But it's a really important, I think, point that you're bringing up, and something that it's not front and center. I mean, it's important to think about, and it kind of, you can expand that to really thinking about considering our environment at any given time. What are we actually breathing in? So, where concerns about the coronavirus has really brought that to the forefront. And you could sort of look at how that, water safety and water sources are also another area to kind of think about that. So I think, like, in terms of the time of year and the opportunity to improve ventilation, I mean, when you look at the CDC website, they give some really easy, low cost to no cost, just ideas about how to do the best you can with what you have right now. And maybe you're looking into whether you can install a HEPA filter in your home, and finding out about that. So that probably isn't an option for everybody. Well, there's a large part of the population it's not going to be an option for. So. And
it's a cost consideration that not everybody can afford. So here are some things that the CDC reference that you made earlier. There is, and thank you very much again for the article. That talks about mask guidance for indoor and outdoor. That's one thing. And then I looked further into the ventilation side of things. We have ceiling fans. That's because of our kind of arid and dry climate here. So if you're in those kind of climates, turn the ceiling fans on. Make sure that the ceiling fan is pushing air down, not sucking air back up. That would be suck it back up when it's cold outside. You want the hot air to move up and stay moving. So make sure it's pushing it down so that you're constantly letting it hit the floor, back up again, and have those ceiling fans on as much as you can tolerate and handle the cost. The other thing that not everybody, when you talk to your heating and air conditioning folks, many of them will recommend keep the fan on and constantly circulating during the hot months. One, because you want that air circulating, but I've had my fan on my furnace all the time. It's as efficient, in fact, in some cases more efficient to have it on than to have it turn on and off. Because it takes more power to turn it on than it does to just keep it running. But you have that additional cost for the electric bill. But those are reasonable alternatives to keep air moving in your space. The other thing that has been recommended is, this is where even though it's an airborne virus, COVID, and you don't need as, have you ever seen how many people are really anal retentive about wiping surfaces down? It's an airborne virus, people, airborne. So yes, we still should clean things up. Now, if the contradiction to that is if air is moving in your space, because you've got fans going, ceiling fans, and the air circulation on your furnace, that's going to move stuff off those surfaces. There's a reason to keep the surfaces clean, so things can't adhere to it, and they keep moving to a place where they're filtered out of your system. The other piece of the ventilation system is electrostatic immobilization. And that's another way to knock the viruses down and not allow them to be infectious. There are some products coming out. Most of them are in Europe. The United States has not been aggressive in examining those and letting the FDA approve them. But electrical charges that are emulated into your space through separate units will also help knock the virus down. And those have been in play for many, many years. But regretfully, people with bigger pocketbooks than mine are holding back FDA's approval on other devices. So those are some things about environment. What do you have to say as a mom, Amy, to kids and other moms about keeping the space safe outside of the ventilation? Is there anything you're asking your kids to do besides wear masks or not wear masks that would heighten their protection?
So it brings up I think a good moment just to identify, remind ourselves that we all know now, and it's been proven over and over the last year, but outdoor space is the place to be. So what you're doing outdoors is different than what you're doing indoors. And there are countless studies at this point and lots of reports of why that's the case. It's just coronavirus does not stand up to the outdoor space as well, which is great. So you have enough space between you and enough open air ventilation. You don't have to really be too concerned. And we're really, that's one of the upsides to knowing what we know so far. So one of the things I do is we're outdoors as much as possible. And again, we're lucky to be able to do that. That's not true for everybody.
Yes,
we are. And so knowing what your options are in your immediate environment is really important. And also maybe taking a step back to think of how you might be able to make some lifestyle changes or habit changes that might increase the likelihood of being outside more. Sort of like almost a numbers game. If I can be outside, for 2 more hours out of the day, that's 2 more hours I get to be outside. I get to be in the natural environment. And again, if you're living in New York City, natural environment looks different than if you're living in Boulder, Colorado, but they're both wonderful places to be. So that's the first thing, is really just to kind of bring it back around. It's just, I really encourage and we try to be outside. And outside, I'm a lot less worried about surfaces because I know, as you touched on, there's so much air movement happening that the virus and other pathogens aren't hanging around.
So let's give them some specifics. Let's give them some specifics, Amy, about, let's say, mealtime. Is that a choice for you to be outside?
Yeah. So, and I would say, hey, like, what if you do, mealtime outside? It doesn't have to be at a formalized table, maybe try something different. Try doing picnic style, in the yard or in your little deck off the back of your where you're living, your apartment or your condo. So, because there are definitely still some guidelines based on the data about being in close quarters with other people outside, and you don't know someone else's vaccination status, that brings up an interesting question about, well, what do we do if we have like a shared outdoor space in where we live? Our home is a standalone home, and we have our own back porch, and we can sit on that.
Yep.
But others might be looking at, like, well, we have a shared space in our condominium complex, for instance, that we can go outside, but if someone else is out there, I don't want to be out there with them. And just applying the basic sort of guidelines that we currently have are still, I believe in them and I follow them, which is, if you're, 6 feet apart from somebody, you can easily have your mask off and be, next door to them, both eating dinner, but just apart. And that also brings up the question about how to socialize with friends and people And, I think that having things open up a little bit more based on the CDC guidance, people can be outside if they're vaccinated and unmasked, is great. It's a great kind of reprieve. And what I would say is everyone should be keeping their mask in their back pocket, because you just don't know when you might need to put it back on, or a situation presents itself, or new guidelines come out based on what's happening in the world this week.
Yeah.
And it would be great if we could settle into a rhythm. And we're all desperately wanting that. We want to know, can't we just rely on something here? But humanity is faced with a challenge right now.
Let me ask you this question about what you're saying. If I'm walking down the street, I got my sack lunch with me, I'm gonna go sit someplace, and as you said, there's somebody already at my favorite spot. Rather than just turning tail and moving because there's somebody in my spot and the COVID beast has got me scared, maybe I should just ask them if they've been vaccinated. And if they can prove it to me, like I've got my card on my phone, so that if anybody asks, I can show it to them. This morning when I worked out with my wife and she swims and I can't swim because I can't move my arm, but I walk her in the water and splash a little bit. The people over there, we said, "Are you vaccinated?" "Oh yeah, we are." So we all pulled our masks down. Now we still maintain distance. Does that fit your interpretation?
It fits with the current guidelines that were released this past week.
Okay.
Yeah, with the CDC, and I think that there's a trust factor there. And so that's going to be a personal choice for every individual. You felt comfortable enough with the responses from those you were with that you felt like you could, and that everybody there felt comfortable pulling their masks down. And again, the plus of being outside is you also know you're outside. Now, when you're not outside and you're indoors, I think erring on the side of caution like we've been doing is still the best practice.
Yeah.
And again, keeping in mind that children are not vaccinated, and children are known to be asymptomatic carriers, and it's their role in the spread of coronavirus is still somewhat unclear. So until we've got a vaccination for them too, we have to, it's that part, that piece of things is really important to remember. And so, when you go out, say...
Let's expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the variants, we know there's some variances here in the United States, but where I'm going to go with this on the variants is it relates to children. We've got the situation in India. Prior to that, we had it's maybe still heightened, but in England as well, those two places had an increase in childhood variances.
Yes.
And we're seeing it in more adolescents and young adults than we are really young children. So I'm wondering if the variants and our spikes in the future, which I believe may be coming, are going to be, as you say, through children, but through a variant that really targets kids.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, because I think the couple of questions to answer are, one, if we're not masking and we're passing those same practices to children who aren't yet vaccinated, it's opening up, it's sort of like inviting the variant in to our culture again, because in our society here, like what's happening in the US. So if you think about it, if a variant, and again, I can follow this up too with the vaccine, but if a variant is not, the vaccines aren't standing up to the variants as well, and variants are being spread primarily through younger population because those individuals are not vaccinated, the variant could sort of gain some steam, right? And what we don't want to do is have that happen. We want to do what we can to really prevent the spread of and the, I mean, we're not going to be able to stop it altogether, but the more we can do, the less likely we're going to have these blips of pandemic level numbers, and that saves lives, and that improves our quality of life. So the variants currently, the vaccines are, there's definitely different, you can look up all the stats on which vaccine is covering to what percentage each each of the variants that are coming through. But what we do know is overall there likely will need to be a booster at some point in, it's estimated that they're talking about, I know from Moderna, for instance, is preparing for a booster at 12 months. That's not formalized, it's not what the recommendation is yet, but there is some type of booster that's going to be needed. Exactly when is not clear. And so the future of what's going to happen with how we continue to stay immune to how this virus mutates and changes is still kind of a question mark. But there's going to be at some interval period, different from the flu, but not unlike the flu in that we're going to need to continue to boost our immunity, to be able to keep, prevent the spread and prevent the increased likelihood of continued variants. And this virus is, wants to find a way. To survive just like we do. Well, we don't want it to, but it does.
Yeah. Well, COVID is very it's really tough.
Virulent. It's really tough, and the variants seem to be more virulent.
Yes.
Right? They seem to be even, more aggressive, or however you want to.
So I'm gonna bring that consequence, which is really dire, and bring it down to a less consequential viral bacterial scenario, like not the common flu, but a less virulent flu, or just a common cold. There's various versions of a common cold. So if I'm going to practice good health maintenance for everything I might be exposed to, everything, from the very simple cold sniffle kind of thing to the very serious stuff that could put me in the hospital, unless I've been vaccinated, of course, because but there are different strains, so I still need to be prudent, don't I? I still need to be prudent about, if I have the sniffles, I'm going to wear a mask. I can still function, but I don't need to share it. So do you?
Yeah, I mean, it does bring up general vigilance or awareness and respect of others, includes containing what you might have and preventing spread. So a good example is what a lot of the population in China have. I mean, you heard about the way that they adopted masking like that, and it's because it's already culturally encouraged, and it's not seen, there wasn't any stigma about it. Here, we had a lot to get over to get to the point of everyone accepting that we wear masks. And there's definitely something about learning. I don't want mask etiquette sounds very, might not be the right word for it, but how do you use your mask properly? I mean, the mask, I think getting used to the idea that it's going to be more of a, masks are with us, and we are going to be continuing to wear them, and at different times they may be something that we are doing everywhere we go, every day, and there may be times when, like currently, we can make adjustments, but behaviorally, we got to get used to the fact that it's going to be changing.
Well, and I'm glad you said that.
Not easy.
I'm glad you said that, because there's also a change in our perception of when and how we wear the mask. For example, a hostess at a restaurant wearing a mask has to wear the mask the entire time that he or she is on the floor doing their job. They're walking away from me, taking me to the table, and talking to me. I can't hear a word they're saying. I know they're talking to me because their head's moving, and then they turn back a little bit. So I know there's words coming out of that thing, but the mask is blocking it. So we have some social conditioning about our communication dynamics and how we share. So there's one thing about the mask, of being prudent, being safe and health conscious. But there's also what just drives me insane. I'm talking to these coaches, and they're on the sidelines getting ready for their basketball game to start. Can you imagine what their mask looks like, Amy? It's mesh. I can see their mouth through the mask. It's
Yeah.
like a faux thing so that they can be heard by their players. That mask doesn't stop anything. I mean, if they're talking
Yeah.
strongly, they're going to spew right through that thing. And it's just a joke. So I guess there's two extremes here. Wearing a good mask, being prudent, but be aware that you've got to look at me when you talk at me so I can hear what you're saying. Or the other extreme is, don't play with me here. Don't wear a mask that is just, I mean, it's like tissue paper. Come on.
Yeah.
Be reasonable. What do you say to people that need to get the clue?
Well, sometimes I say things like, it's sort of a tactic, but if I have a child with me, we'll have an open conversation about, when we wear our masks, this is why we're wearing them over our noses. Because, if it's under your nose, and I have to remind my son all the time, he's awesome about keeping his mask on, but it slides down,
yeah.
He forgets about it. And so I say, Lucian, are you wearing your mask right now, or are you not wearing your mask? If you're wearing your mask is over your nose,
Now, he's a
And it's just
fashionista.
reminding, it's like and so how do you have a conversation with an adult? Well, you can respectfully talk the same language. I mean, I think we all need reminders. And
Now, your little guy's a fashionista. Is he got a pattern on that thing, or set of teeth?
he's got lots of patterns. Yeah. You'd like the one, one of his favorite ones has like, a football, a basketball, a soccer ball, and a baseball on it. So he's covering it all.
Because I know his hat selections are really, I love when he puts on his hats during the wintertime. He's
some good ones.
Yeah, he does some really cool things with that. So I can only imagine what his masks choices are. So we've got fashion statements to motivate people into complying with the mask. And I'm also finding out that there needs to be some sizing requirements for some people. There's some people with big heads. I mean,
Well,
literally.
you're bringing up such a good point, because there's putting a mask on because for the badge of I'm wearing my mask, and then there's actually using it properly for the purpose of it. And it's a lot of it can't even, it's not anybody's particular fault. It's hard to even know. While there's good information out there, not everybody's reading it. Like, how do you make sure that the mask you're buying is fitting properly? You can look that up. There are some good guidelines even on the CDC website about that. But you're just remembering, like, the CDC is just like anything else. That there's an effort to provide the best information that they can and to try to keep it updated. I know we're sort of at the end of our time here.
We're getting close.
But
we got a couple more
there's
minutes.
some question about the recent recommendations as it came out and whether they're too stringent and not giving enough, really reflecting the data as accurately as it could in terms of opening things up more. But I think we want to keep in mind again that there are variants floating around, that the numbers have ticked up in some areas of the country. And we are by no means anywhere near where we were, even several months ago. But it is, there's a lot that's going into the decision about how that information comes out. And it's not perfect, but it is. I think it's a great resource overall. And they're really trying to make the information understandable for anybody who, has a few minutes to go on and check it out, so that you can just get reliable information.
Yeah, and
better than getting it from the news, is go to the source.
Yeah, and Amy, we have a few more extra minutes because of the delay in getting started, but I want to emphasize on your point about the CDC is that people take those guidelines and look at it as it relates to your environment and the processes that you use in that environment. Here's an example. We're in Colorado, a lot more open spaces, more opportunity to get outside. It's not New York City, where there's lots of buildings, lots of concrete and glass, a lot more chance for more secluded, sequestered kind of environments, not by choice, just because of where you're at. There's tighter spaces. So apply those standards the CDC provides you in light of your environment. You may need to wear your mask more when you're in Chicago, LA, New York, Atlanta, or wherever. But once you move out of that space, you're going to have opportunities to have chances to pull your mask down and not wear it. But to your point earlier, have it available. I love the lanyards. NFL officials have their own lanyards now, and their masks were made by the NFL for them for their conditions. Now, there are some masks in the NBA that I just think they need to take them away from these officials. They've built in this little sock area for the whistle. It just looks horrific. I mean, it's just so suggestive. It's just it's bad. It's really bad. And yet it's convenient for the official because he doesn't have to mess with the whistle and then mess with the mask. But I said, I'm looking at that, I'm going, oh my goodness, that's just wrong. It's a bad look. Anyway, it fit the standards to what fit you, and then apply processes that help you adhere to those guidelines. Because they're not there to make it hard for you. They're there to help you be safe and to protect you from others who aren't.
Yeah, and I would say one more thing that I think is really helpful to remember is if you're an individual that is fairly, you're in one spot, you're not necessarily traveling a ton, knowing what your local and state government is rolling out and recommending and using that reference is a great one, because again, what we're doing in Boulder is different than what someone's doing, in the larger metropolis areas. So yeah. I think that, and vice versa. I mean, in really open spaced areas, there's probably a lot less mask use right now because it's an option. So I think that, and it's safe to do it outside. So I think that it's also helpful because those entities are basing their information off the CDC, but it might be more directly applicable to the individual environments, kind of like you were referring to, Lowell. So I think it's a good resource as well.
So Amy, in the final moments, as a summertime science mom, what is your takeaway that you want people to have for today's discussion with you?
I think remembering that the things are continuing, they will continue to change, and it's important to be vigilant about going to good sources for the information that you need in order to be safe and protect your family and yourself, and that we're all doing our part, and we're actually helping our own selves and our children out when we follow the guidelines and we stay informed and we adjust our behavior accordingly. And I think that, when you think about mask use, you're by wearing a mask indoors or in the settings that it needs to be worn, that's helping out not only your own self, your children, but also others. And so it comes back around. The less spread of this virus, the less likely anybody is to get it, including you. Including your children.
Good, well said, and words to remember and take action on. So as we close out the show today, I'm going to remind Amy to stick with me once we close out the show. Amy, I'm going to say a proper goodbye and catch up with you a little bit. But that being said, next week we're going to have Rhonda Blanford Green on. She is the President CEO of CHASA. We're going to talk to her about what the rest of the school year looks like athletically and activities-wise. And then what's the summer preparation like? Things should be opening up. Our practice is going to be different. Is there going to be 7-man football to work out in the summertime? What are camps? Are there going to be camps? Are we going to have more of an open framework for those sports camps around the state of Colorado? And I know that Rhonda Blanford Green has been an exemplar for a lot of people around the country, along with our governor, and giving us some great guidance and insight in protecting ourselves and our families. So stay tuned for that. And then, got to let you know that what you may not know, but I hope you do, the All-Star Game is coming to Colorado and the Rockies Stadium at Coors Field. That will be on the Home Run Derby is on July the 12th. The game is on July 13th. And yours truly is participating in setting up some programs with that wonderful organization in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Colorado. So I'm really excited about that. I'll let you have more information about that as we bring some of the key participants, like Curtis Granderson, the president of the Players Alliance that's sponsored by the MLB Players Association, will be a guest of mine in the weeks to come. So thank you all for listening. It's been a great day today. We'll work this out. We'll have a better schedule next week and the week after as we enjoy having a colleague at her 10 o'clock slot working her magic with her guests as well. Amy, thanks again for being part of the show. Always a pleasure to add your perspective. So Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy what you do and do it the best that you can. Have a great day.